Hello and welcome to The Explainer. So AI is set to completely change how we manage people, right? But what happens when the very algorithms we're told to trust are, well, full of hidden dangers? Let's dive in and find out. And this quote from Deloitte just nails it, doesn't it? Finding gold in an ethical minefield. That's exactly what we're digging into today, a fascinating case study that shows just how organizations are trying to walk this tightrope between amazing potential and some pretty serious ethical risks, especially in HR. Okay, so at the heart of this minefield, we've got three big risks. The first one, privacy. I mean, with AI, companies can collect just a staggering amount of data on literally everything, from your performance reviews to how engaged you seem in meetings. The real trick is figuring out how to use all that information ethically and, legally without making everyone feel like they're living in some kind of corporate Big Brother episode. And then there's the big one, bias. See, these AI systems, they learn from the data we feed them. So if our past hiring or promotion data is already biased, and let's be honest, it often is, the AI doesn't just learn that bias. It can actually bake it in, and in some cases, make it even worse. It's like putting a megaphone on existing discrimination. And the last piece of the puzzle is, well, us, the humans. This isn't just a tech problem. It's about how we react when we know we're being watched and measured by an algorithm. Think about it. Does it change how you work? Does it change what you focus on? Absolutely. And that interaction is a huge, often overlooked part of the equation. Okay, so with all these risks, how are companies supposed to handle this? Well, in a perfect world, there's this whole ethical toolkit they can use. Let's take a look at what the ideal setup looks like. Wow, look at this. The ideal toolkit is pretty massive. You've got everything from big picture stuff like legislation and codes of ethics, all the way down to the nitty-gritty of organizational governance. We're talking dedicated AI ethics officers, institutional review boards, and even something called an ethics red team, which is basically a group whose whole job is to try and break the AI and find its biases. It's a really comprehensive arsenal. So that's the ideal, right? The textbook answer. But what actually happens when the rubber meets the road? Well, a really cool study gives us a peek behind the curtain. It followed two different teams inside the same large organization, and what they found shows this massive gap between theory and, well, messy reality. And these two teams couldn't be more different. On one hand, you have Case 1, a permanent central data science unit. Think classic IT department oversight, working on projects affecting over 30,000 employees. Kind of detached. Then you have Case 2, which was this scrappy ad hoc group. It was a mix of HR folks and data analysts run by the HR department, and much closer to the people they were actually studying. Two totally different vibes. So, remember that huge toolkit we just saw? Yeah, about that. This is where it gets really interesting. Look at what they actually used. It's just a tiny slice of the pie. Both teams had a code of ethics, sure. They both used an ethics board. But what's missing? A lot. Like any real in-depth ethics training for one team or a dedicated ethics officer for the other. This really illustrates that huge gap between what's possible and what's practical. And because they were set up so differently, they ended up worrying about different things. The big centralized data science team, they were all about the technical side, preventing algorithmic bias. But the HR-led team, they were way more focused on privacy and how employees' data was being handled. It's a perfect example of how the way you structure a team can literally create its own ethical blind spots. Okay, but here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. The data science team, Case 1, hit a point where they needed to use employee health data. And bam, suddenly they weren't just dealing with their own internal ethics board anymore. They had to answer to a powerful external medical ethics board. And the difference was like night and day. Their internal board, people kind of described it as toothless, just advisory. Its decisions could be overruled. But this external board, its decisions were final, mandatory, non-negotiable. It just goes to show you the massive difference between internal self-policing and a regulator with real teeth. So this brings up the big question, right? Why? Why is there such a massive disconnect between the perfect world toolkit and what these teams actually did? The research gives us some really important clues. It wasn't for a lack of trying, really. The study found that people were aware of the ethical risks. They knew this stuff was important. But putting that knowledge into practice, that was a whole other story. Basically, the tech was just moving way too fast, and the guardrails, the governance, the training, the rules were struggling to keep up.
And even though senior leaders kept saying they wanted human oversight, the day-to-day pressure to just get the project done often pushed those deeper ethical questions to the back burner.
And this is where it gets really crucial, especially for anyone studying organizational psychology. Think about something like the Pygmalion effect. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Well, imagine an AI labels an employee as high potential. What's a manager going to do? They're going to invest more time and resources in that person who then performs better. The AI's prediction becomes true. But the flip side is just as scary. A low potential label could mean someone gets overlooked and never gets the chance to prove the algorithm wrong. And then there's Campbell's Law, which is just as important. It basically says that the more you use a specific number to make big decisions, the more people will try to game that number. So, let's say an AI decides promotions based on how many customer calls you make. What happens? Everyone starts making tons of short, useless calls just to boost their numbers. The metric becomes the goal, and the actual job, helping customers, gets totally lost in the shuffle. So all of this, the bias, the privacy issues, the way people change their behavior, it all boils down to one single critical question. A question that honestly the research shows nobody has a good answer for yet.
And that question is, who is actually responsible here? Who is accountable when something goes wrong? Both teams really struggled with this. Was it the data scientists who wrote the code, the HR managers who clicked the button, the senior leaders who signed off on the project? It's like an ethical hot potato. And without someone clearly owning it, all this talk of governance and ethics, it just stays talk.
So I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that making AI ethical isn't really a tech problem. It's a people problem. It's an organizational design problem. You can have all the codes of ethics and fancy review boards you want, but if they don't have real power, if they're toothless, then what's the point? The real challenge is building systems and a culture where accountability isn't just a buzzword. So that leaves us and you with a final, really important question to think about. As these incredibly powerful tools become more and more a part of our working lives, how are you going to help bridge that huge gap between the ethical ideals we talk about and the messy reality of the workplace?